this is my most anticipated film of 2016. Like, there's been some good movies. I had high hopes for Batman vs Superman. Kind of let down, but it wasn't terrible. Really excited for Suicide Squad, and as a Harry Potter fan, I cannot wait for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. But Civil War, the trailers have been magnificent. I am a huge fan of the franchise. Captain America: Winter Soldier is like my favourite Marvel film of all time. So let's see what it's like. Civil War was absolutely amazing, totally worth the hype, but there's people waiting to see it, so I'll wait till I get home to review, but yeah. So Civil War was a really cool culmination of all the events that have happened so far, both in the Captain America stories and also in the Avengers stories. So, because the last one we've had was Avengers Age of Ultron, where Tony Stark created Ultron and absolute mayhem occurred. So, naturally, Tony's feeling a lot of that guilt, and I went into this movie 100% Team Cap, and while my position didn't really sway at all over the course of the movie, I did begin to understand a lot more where Tony Stark was coming from, and I think it was interesting to see that side of his character. Like, he's always been this kind of egotistical, quipping guy, always making like light of everything, always wanting to seem like the big guy, whereas in this, he did feel very flawed. And I think it was interesting to see him actually realising that about himself, and while I don't agree with what he was trying to do, you could tell he was thinking he was doing it for the right reasons. So there are two main plots that run throughout Civil War, and the first is the whole Sokovia Accords thing, the Superhero Registration Act, that they would have to be under the UN and they would have to follow what the UN told them to do. And the other one is more to do with Bucky Barnes, but I won't go into the full details of that because this is a spoiler-free review. So, with the Sokovia Accords, Captain America's always like, we need to have the right to do our own thing. We need to be able to go to where people need us the most. We need to be able to, because he feels that the superheroes themselves are the ones who are best able to govern themselves, and he doesn't want to be a part of the UN's agendas because everyone always has agendas and those agendas are changing. Whereas Iron Man feels that they need to be put in check. And so that's where the whole conflict sort of arises, and it just builds from there with like different events that occur throughout the movie, and this gap between them just grows wider and wider and wider and wider until you do just get, like you've seen in the trailers, that whole massive clash of the two opposing teams.
Tony, if someone dies on your watch, you don't give up.
Who said we're giving up?
We are for not taking responsibility for our actions. This document just shifts the blame.
So, onto the characters of the opposing teams. One new character that is introduced is SpiderMan. And while I am a fan of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, I think that this is probably the closest we're ever going to get to a cinema portrayal of the comic book Peter Parker. Tom Holland does an absolutely amazing job portraying a guy who's just coming to terms with what it means to have these powers and also battling very teenage struggles at the same time. Like, there's a great line where he's just like says, I can't come, I've got homework to do. And it just sort of shows that he doesn't really fully understand all the implications of his superpowers yet, and he's still got that kind of teenage, light-hearted air about him, and it's just really, really cool. And even in the battle scenes, you still see that teenage side of him. It's a very Spider-Man-y feel to it, and I'm really looking forward now to the Spider-Man standalone film that's coming up, because I think he'll do a great job in that as well.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude!
Another new character that is introduced is Black Panther, and we learn a lot about his motivations and a lot about who he is, and I think he's a really cool addition because he is just, even his costume just looks really awesome. And while I don't want to give away what his motivations are or his plot development, I will say that you do see a lot of change in him, and he's probably one of the more rational superheroes while still being incredibly driven and doing what he believes is right, and you will see why he takes Iron Man's side in this. And his motivations, I would say, are just as, even though he has a lot less introduction than like Captain America and Iron Man, for example, I would say his motivations are just as clear, if not more so, throughout the course of the movie, and he's a really, really interesting new addition, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of Black Panther. Another great thing about this movie are the directing choices. Like, this is the second Captain America movie directed by the Russo brothers, the last one being Winter Soldier, which I also absolutely loved. And they just make a lot of really great decisions. Like, for example, the camera shots. They've got lots of point of view shots, so you see it from loads of different angles, and you see it it just helps to build the action rather than just always having like wide pan shots or whatever. Each scene has its own feel to it, and also the pacing is very cleverly done. Like, I don't usually like very long movies, whereas this one, even though it was a fair amount of runtime, it did feel like all of those scenes were necessary. Like, you had the fast-paced action scenes, which are awesome to watch, but also the slower, more character-developing scenes, they were also really important. And even though they had some like moments which you might think, well, why is that necessary? Well, they weren't necessarily necessary. They did add something, and I think they gave the faster-paced scenes more meaning by being there. Another great thing about Civil War for me was the fact that it was very much about the individual characters rather than some like massive threat. It was all about their decisions and their reactions to what was happening. And while I won't go into the main villain of this, I will say he is very, very different to the villains we've experienced in the past. Like, whereas they've always been big and theatrical, this one is a lot more calculating, and it's a nice, interesting change to the usual expectation of a movie with the Avengers in. And I just think it worked really well, the whole having two main plots going side by side and sort of entwining towards the end. And you see how all the events sort of work together. They sort of start off as individual events and then they bring them together, and it works incredibly well, having this separate villain and also the separate motive for them. And yeah, it's just a brilliant addition to the film.
What do?
We fight.
All in all, I would say that Civil War is probably one of the best movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to date. My favourite is still Captain America Winter Soldier, but I would say this is probably second. I'm torn between this and Guardians of the Galaxy for second. But yeah, it's a really great way to introduce all the characters in a new setting. And all of the characters are very much at their best. You see a lot more of their motivations, and even though they get less individual screen time, it's a lot more developed when they are on screen. So yeah, go watch Captain America Civil War. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel for more review videos every Sunday, and yeah, see you later.